Welcome to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Pierre Poilievre absolutely demolishing Justin Trudeau. He just pulverizes him. Pierre's on his A game, his A+ game. Justin Trudeau once, he's pulling a strong F as usual. A big failure for our country, just an absolute loser. A man who's accomplished nothing but scamming people in his life. And you see it in the House of Commons, they go toe-to-toe on the carbon tax. Pierre comes locked and loaded. Trudeau did not expect it. He just gets wiped out.
We found yesterday that his government is under RCMP investigation again, this time for a Rive scam. The commissioner of the RCMP revealed, however, that the last time they were investigating him for criminal activity, he blocked them in the SNC-Lavalin affair from getting cabinet documents. So will he lift cabinet confidentiality and hand over all the documents to the police so that they can investigate any of his potential crimes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the situation around ArriveCan is obviously unacceptable, which is why authorities are looking into this procurement process. And anyone who took advantage of everything we were doing to try and keep people safe during COVID to get rich will face consequences. That's the way our system works.
Does that include you, Trudeau?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
But that's not the way the system has worked since he took office 8 years ago. According to the RCMP Commissioner, he not only refused to be questioned in the SNC-Lavalin criminal investigation and in the Aga Khan Billionaire Island investigation, but he blocked key cabinet documents from being included in those investigations. We now know that an app that was supposed to cost $80,000 went up to $60 million after the NDP helpfully voted for those extra funds. We don't know who criminally benefited from that. So once again, will the Prime Minister waive cabinet confidentiality, turn over all the documents, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Leader of the Opposition's digging into the past to try and bring up things that were settled many years ago. But if he really wants to talk about the past, he should talk about the fact that the Conservative leader was at Transport Canada working hand in hand with the minister as the founders of the company involved in ArriveCan were getting millions of dollars in contracts from the department he was working for. Mr. Speaker, we are taking seriously any concerns around procurement. Authorities are looking into it. There will be consequences for anyone who took care of our COVID protection efforts to get themselves rich.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's dads, brothers, uncles, second roommate's friend owns a boat who knows a guy who has one testicle, and he talked to the guy at the GC Strategies once. He's the one to blame.
That answer proves again that he's not worth the cost or the corruption. We know that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, the cost of everything has gone up, in part because he's given away money for nothing. In a Rive scam, an app that was supposed to cost $80,000 was actually how much? $60 million at least, and counting, because the Auditor General says she doesn't have the documentation to do the full calculation. Today, though, we have a common sense Conservative motion that require the Prime Minister release the full cost of the app and recover the money for Canadians within the next 100 days. Will he vote for that common sense motion? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, we see the Leader of the Opposition choosing to fling mud on a question that I've said is unacceptable. The authorities are looking into it. But he doesn't want to talk about the housing investments that we're making across the country. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that he voted against dental care that seniors are going to be benefiting from as of May. He doesn't want to talk about childcare. He doesn't want to talk about Ukraine. He doesn't want to talk about all the things where Conservatives are out of line with Canadians. We're going to continue focusing on the things that matter to Canadians every single day.
There's that Justin Trudeau rant we all hate.
To axe the tax, this Prime Minister wants to hike the tax. First of all, he wants to quadruple it between now and 2030. And on April 1st, he plans to hike it by 23% with the support of the NDP. The tax hike will be bigger than any increases in the rebate, and therefore people will be bigger, the average families in all the provinces will be bigger net losers under this tax than they were before. With Canadians unable to eat, heat, and house themselves, will the Prime Minister cancel his plan to hike the tax on April 1st?
I believe this might be one of the first times the Leader of the Opposition has ever recognized that there is a Canada carbon rebate that he is going to cancel. Checks that he will prevent from delivering to Canadians right across the country. 8 out of 10 Canadians households get more money than they pay in carbon pricing in the provinces in which they apply. In Alberta, $1,800 a year to the family of 4. $1,200 a year in Manitoba. Even in Ontario, $1,120 to a family of 4 in Ontario. That's money in their pockets that he wants to take away.
Is Trudeau drunk? Is he hitting the bottle? You hear that at the beginning? He's like,
The Leader of the Opposition.
I'm glad he mentioned his phony rebates because $1,800 in Alberta is the rebate. That's what he said. You heard him. Here's the gross cost. $2,943. So he's going to take away $2,943, but give back $1,800, and then ask you to be thankful for it, Mr. Speaker. Isn't that just proof that the carbon tax is just like him, not worth the cost?
Speaker, the parliamentary budget officer himself recognized that the $1,800 in rebate that we're sending, for example, to a family of 4 in Alberta is more than that family of 4 costs with the price on pollution. That is the calculation that is done right across the country that shows that 8 out of 10 families are better off with the Canada carbon rebate than they pay in the price of pollution in areas in which it's brought in. We are both fighting climate change and delivering more money to households across the country, money that he wants to take away.
I should note here, if you look at the Liberals, they're all very intently watching him. So clearly, this whole thing, the entire Liberals' stance is built on this one issue, and they're watching to see how he is defending this entire party with this. Just next time we watch them, they're locked in.
Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer report is in my hands. Page 3 of a distributional analysis of the federal fuel charge under the 2030 emissions reduction plan. Google it. Look it up. It's on the Parliamentary Budget Officer's website. You don't have to believe me, and you certainly don't want to believe him. Go look for yourself. The average Ontario family will pay $1,674 in carbon taxes next year. That's $630 more than they get back in rebates. So why doesn't the Prime Minister Google it, look up the report, check the facts, and axe the tax?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the first and basic
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the first conclusion of the Parliamentary Budget Officer is in the math, on the face of it, 8 out of 10 families get more back through the price on pollution through the Canada carbon rebate. The reality is, if one wants to talk about longer-term and broader economic consequences of a price on pollution, you have to talk about the cost of inaction. You have to talk about the benefits of investing and innovating in carbon reduction technologies. That's the full picture that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't want to look at, because he doesn't think you can build a strong economy and fight climate change at the same time.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's doing neither at the same time. Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary budget, first of all, I should catch that word he said, on the face of it. Carbon tax is terrific. Well, the parliamentary budget officer actually did the calculation of the full fiscal and economic cost for the average family. And he found that every family in the middle class is worse off under the carbon tax. For example, in Ontario, the net cost for the average family above and beyond rebates is $627 this year. How are they going to pay for that?
Families in Ontario are going to be getting a Canada carbon rebate worth $1,120 this year. That's a family of 4. A family in Nova Scotia, $824. A family in Saskatchewan, $1,500 this coming year. And that is more for 8 out of 10 families than the price on pollution actually is. We are fighting climate change. We are innovating and creating jobs of tomorrow. And we're putting more money in the pockets of Canadians, checks that leader of the opposition would take away.
So in Nova Scotia, you get $800 for family of 4, but you get $1,800 in Alberta and $1,500 in Saskatchewan. I don't need to say anything. Like, the whole thing is ridiculous, but then it's like unfair per province.
Mr. Speaker, here's a very simple way to measure it up. Right here from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report. The total gross cost of the carbon tax in Ontario is $1,674 for this coming year. $1,674. $1,674. $1,674. How much is the rebate?
With record-setting wildfires.
There it is.
With floods, with climate.
It's 1,100. That's the answer. 1,150.
With record-setting wildfires across the country, with droughts, with floods, Canadians know the costs of the impacts of climate change. The Leader of the Opposition has no plan to fight climate change. He's not proposing anything except, Mr. Speaker, to pull away both the price on pollution, which forces polluters to pay right across the country, that puts more money through checks that arrive 4 times a year in Canadians' pockets in the jurisdictions where there is a carbon price. We have a plan to fight climate change and put money in people's pockets. He has no plan.
Classic Trudeau drama class there. Let's look at the forest fire fact there that Trudeau just brought up. Now, if we look at the cause of forest fires, this one goes all the way to 2020, which kind of gets cut off there. The blue down here is the human cause. You can see human activity. Lightning is this yellowy peach color. Basically, all these other ones don't even register. So it's over half of them, especially more in recent years here, and this has gone up in the last couple of years, but half of the forest fires are caused by people. If Trudeau was really serious about forest fires, he'd be putting in severe penalties for causing fires and increasing the policing around this. We look at a couple other graphs here. This one is in BC. Once again, this is for 2023, the big forest fire season. This is caused by people, the yellow. Lightning is this one, and unknown is this pie wedge. This is what, 65% of fires caused by people. If we look at this one, it says 2,181 are caused by natural, 1,525 by people. So however you want to split it, we can just say at least half are caused by people. So he should really be focusing on that, because that is what you can actually control. Taking our tax dollars and then somehow saying that that fixes the climate, the carbon levels, that's not actually something that happens. Unless all of us actually switch to using snowshoes and skis to go to work, like what happened during the big event when people stopped going to work. That actually dropped the levels for sure. But that's not practical, because people have to work to live. So the only thing you can do is control what you can, which is tackling the people starting these fires and making it some sort of deal with China to get them to reduce their emissions, as they contribute 30% of the global carbon. We're only 1.5% in Canada. He doesn't actually want to do anything about climate change. If he did, he would tackle this stuff. He would end the rampant clear-cut logging in British Columbia. And I won't get into the history of this, but basically this whole section of Vancouver Island was basically stolen from First Nations and then sold off for, I think, $1 million back in the day. It was a corrupt deal, and now all this is owned by the logging company. But all of this stuff is Crown land, basically from the middle point to the left. Yet the government still gives out contracts hand over fist to these companies to cut down all these trees, and they're not done so in a environmentally sound manner. Like, what is environmental about that? Like, leaving one string of trees so it technically falls within regulations is not an environmental plan. Let's get real. And it happens too right against the main artery road here. Like, this is not even up to date. All of this is cut down now, which means this whole highway can get wiped out with a huge snowfall and avalanches. And then that means everyone who lives out here wouldn't have access to the rest of civilization. If Trudeau really cared, he would stop these clear cuts and have them nice and faded forests that actually can still maintain their moisture. But he doesn't care. He doesn't actually care about climate change. And it's happening everywhere. You can just put your map anywhere, zoom in. Like, and I'm not against logging. We need trees. I think all of these should be faded so they hold moisture, like I said before. And we should have dirt cheap lumber in Canada. If we actually had a climate plan, it would include all of this stuff. Trudeau's just a big liar.
We have a plan to fight climate change and put money in people's pockets. He has no plan.
Whoa, he doesn't need to get angry about it. Just asking some numbers here. Right? So he was very anxious to talk about these wonderful rebates up until a moment ago. And now he doesn't want to say a thing about it. He even gave him a fancy new name. I'm going to say it again. In Ontario, the gross cost of the carbon tax is $1,674 for the average family. $1,674. How much is the rebate?
He suggests that I don't have to get angry about climate change. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are worried and angry about climate change. They see the wildfires cutting across this country last summer that are already started up in Alberta. He sees the droughts. They see the floods. They have no plan. Their plan is to withdraw the 4 times a year checks that land in the bank accounts of Canadians, that the Parliamentary Budget Officer demonstrates gives more money to 8 out of 10 families right across the country in jurisdictions where it's applied. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan. He doesn't.
He's just trying to bribe us now with those checks.
Will the Prime Minister cancel his April 1st 23% carbon tax hike on food?
As one of the Conservative leader's own MPs recognized, there is absolutely no data or proof to link their theory around the price on pollution and the price of groceries.
Give it up,
but
Trudeau.
If they actually cared about affordability for Canadians, they would have voted in favor of dental care for our most vulnerable seniors, for young families.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
2 million people a month can't afford groceries and are forced to line up at food banks. It's just now that those food banks are running out of food and Canadians are diving into dumpsters. Literally, there's an 8,000 member Facebook group called the Dumpster Diving Network.
Shame.
How can the Prime Minister look those people in the eyes and raise taxes on their food when they're eating out of garbage cans?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we recognize that many Canadians are facing extremely difficult times, which is why we're continuing to step up our supports across the country for food banks, for programs, and for supports for vulnerable Canadians. This is something that we have taken seriously and we will continue to. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're continuing to move forward on concrete measures to help Canadians, like dental care, like pharmacare, like child care.
Please, Trudeau, stop trying to help us. You're the worst Prime Minister in Canadian history. You're one of the worst Canadians in history. You'll go down as the Canadian that has caused the single most amount of suffering to all Canadians, the largest amount of Canadians in Canadian history.
That's the best answer he can come up with after 8 years of record food price increases that has forced people not just to food banks, but to literally jump into dumpsters and bring their phones that they can network on Facebook to share tips on how to eat out of garbage cans. In Canada, life was not like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone. In the meantime, we'll at least have the humanity to cancel his April 1st 23% tax hike.
Farmers across this country know the impacts of climate change
on
the food supply in Canada, on the growing and production of food. These are things that we are fighting against by fighting against climate change and putting more money in the pockets of Canadians right.
Mr. Speaker, I need to put more money in my own pocket.
Cities understand that we need to change the rules to get more homes built faster. And indeed, the only one gatekeeping this progress is the Conservative leader himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He pretends he hasn't been in government for the last 8 years. He acts like this is his first day on the job, Mr. Speaker. In fact, he has to read off notes would suggest it is his first day on the job. The reality is that housing costs have doubled since he promised to lower them. Yes, he's created massive programs with wonderful new agreements and beautiful photo ops where politicians pat each other on the back and smile while they cut ribbons. The problem is that after 8 years, nothing is getting built. Why won't the Prime Minister get out of the way, cut the bureaucracy, so we can build the homes?
19 years as a politician, the Leader of the Opposition, including some time as a housing minister, and his plan to fix housing is any anything but a plan. He'd also, get this, rip up the housing accelerator agreements, which are unlocking over 600,000 new homes, and he'd put the GST back on apartment construction. Housing experts like Mike Moffat say the Conservative leader's plan is exceptionally weak, and it's a sign that the Conservatives don't understand the urgency or scale of the housing crisis.
He brags that there's a housing crisis after he's been in power for 8 long years. He quotes the same failed liberal academics that gave him the advice that helped him double the price in the first place. Our common sense plan will incentivize cities to speed up and lower the cost of building by requiring they permit 15% more homes as a condition of getting the money. The more they build, the more they get. The less they build, the less they get. We pay builders based on the number of homes they build, realtors on the number that they sell. We should pay municipalities based on the number they permit. Isn't that common sense?
You're right on it.
Slogans and buzzwords don't get housing built. Deals, constructive deals with municipalities and provinces do. And Mr. Speaker, we see time and time again, Conservatives have nothing to propose but cuts, conditions, and fights with municipalities.
Trudeau's slipping. He's just an absolute bumbling mess. He seems to have lost his gusto. He's got no more fight in this. This is one of the rare House of Commons here where it goes back and forth in French for a long time. They say a lot of the same stuff. There's a few other bits in here, but Pierre and Trudeau are going back and forth for the entire hour here, like barely anyone else talks. It's pretty crazy. There's one more clip here at the end. But Trudeau starts speaking here. I don't know what happens, but someone stands up and does something, and they basically shut the whole thing down here for a bit.
Last year was one of the worst wildfire seasons on record. We saw droughts, we saw floods. We know the impact of climate change is real right across the country, something the Conservative Party continues to deny. The reality is our leaders, our Minister of Emergency Preparedness was there to engage with
Someone's doing something. You see them, they're pointing there. You see someone's up here somewhere. You can see Andrew Scheer here. He's telling them to come down. I don't know what's going on here. These guys are wild.
Order!
Fergus is pissed. Look at him. He looks so pissed. Look at his face.
Not to be disruptive in the House or to cause disorder in the House.
That does it for this one. It was a Wednesday session, so Trudeau's usually there for work on Wednesdays, and they typically go back and forth a lot more than usual with him and Pierre, but it was the entire session this time, and Pierre just crushed him over and over, brought all the facts. It's funny, he was ready for it. Trudeau brought out the Ontario gets $1,150 whatever dollars back. He's like, pulls it out and he's like, no, it's 16 whatever it was, 1647 is the cost. And then, you know, Trudeau's obviously, backs in the corner, blames wildfires, points at everything else. Typical Trudeau crap as usual. At this point, the election's basically solidified. If we look at the numbers, the Conservatives continuing to dominate. They're up 4%, 42% now. The Liberals keep dropping. They were 26 before. Now they're 25. The question that remains now is, with wildfire season coming up, right now there's a low amount of snowpack and water where I'm at in Vancouver Island. I live in a rainforest. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on in the rest of Canada in terms of that, but up until till last night, there was very low amount of snow, and thus there's going to be a lot higher chance of forest fires. If for some reason there is a crazy forest fire season, even worse than last year, then obviously the Liberals will lean on that as much as possible to get support. I don't know if that's going to be happening, because let me show you here. So as you can see, it dumped snow here last night. Now it's raining a lot, so it kind of washes away a lot of that snow around here, but it did snow quite a bit. So I don't know if the forest fire season out here is going to be that much of a problem now, because the snowpack level is going to be much higher. There'll be a lot more water reserves. The ground's going to be saturated, etc. That's really, I think, all Trudeau's got left, is to hope that there's terrible forest fires this summer and then try to lean on that as a political backbone, a back brace for his campaign. That's it. But Canadians have had enough. We've had enough of Trudeau. We've had enough of his rhetoric, his lying. I mean, they just need to stop lying. Like, you're not going to win any votes by lying to the public. I don't understand why any politician would do that. If you're just straight up, even if he's just straight up, he's like, yeah, we're taking more than we're giving you back. Like, I think he would get a little bit of respect if he did that. Now, people aren't going to vote for him because he's still a terrible leader. As Kevin O'Leary once said, he's the worst manager of Canada. He wouldn't let him manage a candy store. Trudeau's obviously not one to try to leave this with some sort of grace. He doesn't care about his reputation because he's a narcissist. So with that, we'll leave that where it's at. We'll see if I get thrown in jail for life next week when new legislation comes in for the anti-hate speech. So till then, follow me on X. That's the only source that is completely free speech on the internet right now. Thanks for watching at the end of the video here. I greatly appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe. Turn on the bell notification so you get notified of my videos. Stay warm, stay fed. I'll see you guys in the next one.